Onboard spa. Soaking in a hot tub, I watched the snow fall silently. With a splash, someone sat next to me. "So, we meet again," I murmured with a look of mock surprise. "So far from home." "It's a small ship, Henry." She raised her glass to me. "You stand out in the crowd." I relaxed. The spa was full of rich, scantily clad tourists in their early 20s to late 80s. "Tell me what you see," I asked. "It's like a fashion show, don't you think?" She gave me no time to answer. The young and sexy prowl the catwalk, every inch of exposed skin a statement, every scrap of fabric a symbol of status. She finished her drink in one gulp, while the rich sit in the audience, unseen, staring and drooling. "Do you miss it?" She looked at me, her pupils dilated. "Your work?" I said nothing. And she just continued talking like I wasn't there. "I miss the thrill of being seen, photographed, being an icon, you know." She sighed and slumped into the water like someone had just turned her off. The rest was shit, a tiring, never-ending, degrading pile of human waste. The rest, I don't miss. "It was a dirty business," I agreed. Looking at me in the eyes, she took a deep breath, clamped her nose, and slowly submerged under the hot, bubbling water. The silent dance of the snowflakes grew heavier and heavier. The next few days I spent in my cabin, avoiding everyone, Hope included. I read a bit. I slept a lot. One day I saw jagged mountains reaching straight from the sea and up to the sky. South Georgia. The whole shore was littered with gigantic sun-bleached bones left behind by the whaling industry. Somewhere on the island, Sir Ernest Shackleton died. A short trip to see the cross, overlooking a scenic Cumberland Bay, was planned. Macaroni penguins. Really? In one of the fords, there was Grivilton, an old sealing station, and a place where the Falklands War started. I wasn't there to witness it. Glacial rivers flowed from the snow-capped mountains, straight to the sea. We watched young albatrosses learning to fly. The trick was that their parents had to stop feeding them. Finding the right motivation. Parenting 101. The birds accompanying us as we ventured into the open sea. The waves got bigger and bigger, and suddenly we were in the middle of a storm. Passages all but just appeared and were puking in pirate. Suddenly, seasickness spared me. I had the ship to myself. Don't drink alone. She wore her cocktail dress with a casual charm that was the result of many hours of rigorous training. Alone at the bar, with a drink in her hand, she looked like she'd just stepped out of a film noir. I watched her, for a while, only to eventually notice her eyes in the mirror over the counter, watching me, watching her. She patted the bar stool on her left. "Come and join me. I don't like drinking alone." We drank in silence, and I couldn't help but notice how good a composition she'd make with half of her face in shadow and her eyes bright. "You keep stealing glances at me." There was a teasing tone in her voice. I was thinking about a photo. I looked at her through the frame I'd made with my fingers. "I thought you'd retired." I did retire. I put my palms flat on the bar. But old habits die hard. "Do you have your favorites?" she asked. "Photos, I mean." I mulled over the question for a while. "Yeah, I have a few that I like. Paris, Milan, New York." I shook my head. "Kabul, Afghanistan." "What are you talking about?" Hope frowned. I had another career before we met, before fashion. She looked at me, perplexed. I was a war photographer. I looked her dead in the face. From the mid-70s to the early 90s, the Troubles, Afghanistan, Cambodia, Iraq, Suriname, Iran, Rwanda, Bosnia. I wasn't sure how many of the conflicts she was old enough to remember. I took some photos, I won some awards, I got shot at, I saw some people die. I thought I was doing something important, but in the end, I don't think anybody cared, even when war came to Europe. She mouthed, "Wow," then fell silent. "So, what do you think?" I asked when the silence became uncomfortable. "I knew you were hiding something," she said. "You're a man of secrets, Henry." Later, as we stumbled out of our cabins, she leaned toward my ear and breathed a question. Which was worse? I couldn't answer. Both seemed like they'd been exciting in the beginning, and both were a horror when I actually had to make a living out of them. That's why I'm past this whole making a living thing. And with that, she was gone. They say you never forget your first iceberg. I agree. The South Orkney Islands, quite a spectacular view. There was too much ice to go ashore. We were entering, as the brochure explained, whale-rich waters. The sea was still turbulent. Sitting in a library when the ship made its way through a blizzard was quite a surreal experience. We were headed towards Elephant Island, where Shackleton's expedition spent the winter. Yet another tourist attraction. When the weather allowed, I spent my time on the deck. The tip of the iceberg. She was standing there, looking at the islands on the horizon. "This is my spot," I said as I approached her. "I'm not sure if I appreciate the company." It took her a moment to acknowledge my existence. "I'm not so sure either." Her words flew out in soft, white clouds. "So, do you?" I joined her without a word. We were the most comfortable in silence. "I need you to take my picture." She looked at me as she asked the question, suddenly vulnerable. I shook my head. "I'm done with photography." She looked at me pleadingly. "No, Hope, I'm done. I'm sorry." Faded photographs. There's bugger all we can do with this lighting. I looked through the viewfinder and changed the lens. Besides, I don't do photography anymore. "But you have all the equipment with you?" "Frankly, it's none of your business." I checked the test picture. "I'll pay you. I can afford it." She kept her chin high. "You know I have the money." "Money isn't the issue," I said, shaking my head. "Of course, for you it never is." She poured us a drink. "So what's the problem, Henry?" Where should I start? "I burned out. It's as simple as that," I shrugged. "I feel like I've taken all the pictures I was meant to take in my life. I still dream of war and wake up in the middle of the night, drowned in sweat." I shook it off. "My pictures are still used in articles and documentaries." "But it changes nothing at all." She looked like she wanted to say something, but I didn't give her the chance. Maybe I made some impact, maybe not. I cast my pebble into the ocean. The ripples will fade away soon enough. History marches on. Hope made a strange noise. I looked at her. She was trying not to laugh. "Henry Taylor, the man who single-handedly changed the course of history," she said, wiping away a tear. "You have a hell of an ego." She looked so ridiculous that I just had to capture it. I lifted the camera and quickly pressed the shutter release. I looked at the picture. It was good. blow up. I was thinking of a boudoir shoot, said Hope, spreading a few $1,000s worth of lingerie on the bed. Why do you need one? I asked, and started setting up the lighting. Why do you need to know? She held up 2 lace teddies. Which one is sexier? I raised the camera, and soon we found our old rhythm. Pose, shoot, pose, shoot, change clothes, pose, shoot. Why are we doing this again? Hope was posing against the window, hair falling over her naked shoulders, eyes idly following the drifting ice. For my husband. An anniversary gift? I winked. Nice. An insurance policy, she shrugged. I pressed the shutter release. She reached behind her back and undid the bra. I'm a wife. She massaged her breasts and pinched her nipples. Without children, I'll be gone in a year or 2. She looked at the camera and batted her eyelashes. He's not saying it, but it's a competitive market. Is this what you want? Being a trophy wife? I asked. Yes, it is. She reached for a drink. If it weren't for him, I'd be one of those discarded dolls, high on meth, shooting porn, or both. I said nothing. There was nothing to say. Such is life. Hope looked at me. Pass me the heels, would you? Coffee and cigarettes. What would your daughter think? She giggled as we were putting the gear away. Hanging out with naked chicks like this. What would your husband think? I retorted. Don't try to change the topic. She took the camera off me and started going through the pictures. We were talking about your daughter. Her birthday's in a few days, I said, the same day as her mother's. What did you get her? Asked Hope. I know you have something special in mind. A challenge, I said. She needed wind in her sails. Meanwhile, the daughter. To the edge of the world. We set sail before dawn. Night had started to become a relative term here. Everything was devoid of color, like black and white photography. Black mountains, white ice, black water. Ahead of us, icebergs waited, like huge buildings prowling on open water. The icebergs floated around us, were an awe-inspiring sight. It really was the end of the world. I felt good. Lemaire Channel. Seals and penguins rested on the ice. From a distance, they looked like peas on a white plate. It was our watch again. The channel was narrow, framed on either side by imposing cliffs of rock and ice. We were ushered through by cracks, roars, and murmurs of the landscape. The bay was filled with grinding ice. As we pushed our way through the floes, the setting sun lit everything in bright reds and oranges. Dinner at the end of the world. An iceberg, carpeted in penguins and reclining seals, stood majestically in the water. I couldn't help but think of the Titanic. The seals looked like French girls ready to be painted. We entered Delonical Bay and I gasped. Ahead of us, sandwiched between 2 black mountains, was a magnificent azure glacier radiating in the sunlight. I'd never seen anything so perfectly beautiful, so calm and powerful at the same time. I wanted to squeal like an overexcited teenager. We moored by the iceberg and ate some stew while admiring the glacier. We all stood there motionless and silent, and for a while I felt at home. That was the farthest point south we'd traveled on our journey. But of course, that peaceful moment couldn't last forever. After one sip of wine, David started bragging about his business trips. I excused myself and went to my cabin, where I lay in my bunk and looked out at the sea. Going north again. The temperature dropped and the water began to freeze as we set course for Hidden Bay. I helped the galley watch make sandwiches. My watch was beginning. I kept our heading. Sailing takes time, Chris remarked. How do you manage to balance it with the rest of your life? I do enough overtime, I said, to be able to take longer vacations. Icebergs floated around us, looming in the mist. The sun shone on the ice, and the ice glimmered with all the colors of the rainbow. I was tired to the bone. I spotted a leopard seal. It looked adorable. I knew it was a huge wild animal, but it was still adorable from a distance. I collapsed on my bunk. The yacht glided through the calm waters and I slept deeply. Hidden Bay cut deep into the steep, frozen mountains. We started looking for a safe place to drop anchor.